Are you searching for answers? Discover your true identity. Stay tuned to Shalom World.
Chris as a person.
My wife used to say he's very intelligent.
I'd say he's an excellent role model.
If I had to describe Chris with one word, it would be strength.
He is probably the most stubborn of them all.
Chris is just a very inspiring person to me.
Chris as a person, he's very nice.
He's very smart. When I say he's intelligent, he's intelligent.
He was amazingly gifted in a variety of technical languages.
The day Chris was born, I took his mother to the hospital. When she started to have pains, we went to the hospital. I waited and waited. I waited about 2 hours, and they hadn't come back to let me know what was going on. So I walked outside of the room, and this doctor and another person came up to me and said, Mr. Lenart? I said, yeah. I said, I'd like to know where my wife is. And he says, oh, didn't they tell you you had a son? I said, I had a son? I said, this is new for me. I says, I just came out here to find out what was going on. And they said, well, your wife is in the other room, and we had a little complications there for a while when he was being born. And I said, what was that? He said, well, he had 50-50 chance of dying. And so it was the same with her because she was bleeding a lot. And that was when we found out that Chris was born. And one day when we went to see the doctor, we told him, Chris isn't sitting too well. He's trying to make sounds, but he's not making any sounds like his cousin. Chris's cousin was born about a week and a half after, 2 weeks after Chris. And he was moving around, moving his head and holding himself up, and Chris wasn't doing any of these things. So what we did is we asked him what the problem is. He says, well, Chris has cerebral palsy. And I didn't know what cerebral palsy was. And my wife understood it, and she started to cry, and I couldn't understand why she was crying. And I found out later on, after we were going home, that cerebral palsy was a physical and brain impairment. And this is what we found out, how we found out that he had a problem.
I have cerebral palsy. I can't walk or talk or do things by myself. What you consider mundane, I need someone else to do for me. Cerebral palsy is a condition that occurs before birth, during birth, or after the birth. It is caused by a lack of oxygen to the brain, and for me, my lungs didn't open right away when I was born. I consider that cerebral palsy is my cross to bear, and I embrace it. My mom had a miscarriage before I was born. Since I was a gift from God, my parents brought me up in the church. Going to church on Sundays was the normal things that we did. I think my mom taught me about God than my dad, although he helped. Before going to bed, we always prayed together. They both had to read up on what cerebral palsy was. Educational experts told my mom that children with cerebral palsy have a limited ability to learn.
I met Chris When he was about 16 months old, they came in for an evaluation, and I was the speech pathologist that had the pleasure of working with him and his family. Chris was seen by occupational therapists, physical therapists, and speech pathologists at Easter Seal. Chris's mom was always there for him and was basically his aide, his mother, and caretaker all at one.
Mrs. Lenart, she was a very intelligent person. She was a secretary in her field of work, and she was kind of a person that she worked hard. She was good at what she was doing. Well, my wife was very active with Chris, and when she found out he had cerebral palsy, she contacted the gals at Easter Seal, and she became understanding of what they were saying, what the problem was, and she was learning at the same time. And this when she started reading about what the problems are and what could be the problems. And she was right off the bat going for therapy, understanding, learning all about cerebral palsy. And this is how we got to know what had to be done to give Chris the strength.
The first time I met Chris's parents, obviously, was probably the first or second day of school, and made it very well known he didn't want to come to school. He cried a lot, and that was very hard to watch. It was obviously very hard for his mom and dad, too. His mom was probably one of the strongest advocates I've ever known. She obviously knew Chris better than any of us did. So she tried to share with us his hobbies, what his days were like, so that we would get to know him better and understand his frustrations.
So I've known Chris a very long time. We grew up in the same home parish together, St. Alexis in Bensonville. And I can remember Chris's parents bringing him to church when he was still quite young. And so we've known each other for decades. I think Chris demonstrates that own faith in his heart in many ways too.
I think I saw a lot of growth and a lot of change and evidence that Chris's faith was growing just by his determination and the progress he made in school and how he dealt with his emotions. I think that comes from a faith.
My wife was a very strong Catholic. I was a Catholic by more or less like name. I drove a truck for a living, and I came in contact with a lot of guys and gals, and our language was not very good, you can say. My faith gave me all the comfort and the help that I needed to do the things I needed to do, that I had to do. And I used to pray, and my wife would pray the same way, that, Lord, you give us the strength to be a good parent. The problem he has is going to be with him all the time. And just give him the strength to be able to understand that he has this problem, and life goes on regardless. Your life goes on. You're going to do your best. That's why we're going to be working with you all the time. And when people ask, hey, what's wrong with him? And you're going to be hearing this there a lot. And that's what you feel in your system. You wonder how many times will these questions be hitting you all the time. And that's how life went at the beginning when Chris was born.
I think that nobody can have a PhD because I already have my master's in software engineering. I find this to be really funny, because shouldn't the experts be giving hope, not despair? When I started school, I was 3 years old and I took the bus to school. Oh, it was our ride each way, and I was there a whole day. Do you think a regular 3-year-old child could handle that? I say that no child could handle it either. By the 8th grade, I was mainstreamed for all of my classes, and was on the honor roll for all 4 years of high school. Making friends was really difficult because 2 reasons. The first reason is all of the schools that I went to were about 20 miles away, so I could not hang out with my friends. The second reason is that I am nonverbal, so it was difficult making friends.
One of his biggest accomplishments was college. I mean, he made it all the way through college on his own and got his degree and got a job. So, I mean, that's huge for somebody that's a quadriplegic that has difficulty in movement and stuff. So, but I think the biggest accomplishment was his ability to communicate and tell people how he felt.
When I went to college, the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign had the first dorm that was built for students with disabilities. It was designed for wheelchairs and the rooms were bigger so that they could move around easier. Back when I was in college, the dorm had medical students who received their housing for free if they helped the students with disabilities.
Being with Chris, he gave me that feeling to be a better person, because he would look at me like, hey, what do you want from me, Dad? And I would say, I just want you to be happy. I want you to learn what you can learn and do what you need to do to become a better person. And what he did is brought me, what I was trying to tell him to be, he was making me be the better person by telling me to do these things. Then finally, he got this job. And I used to see the people with his job. He was a computer programmer. And they would come up to him and ask him questions. Now, Chris could not speak. If they wanted an answer, they would have to wait for him to type out the answer. And I never realized when I used to take him to work and would come back and feed him lunch at the beginning for a while, or come back after the end of the day to pick him up, they had any questions, any of them all. There was a couple hundred persons in the office. They all had problems that was something to do with the programs, and he would tell them what the problem was. So it took a couple of seconds or a couple of minutes for him to type out the words to give them the answer. And I used to say, he's not only smart because I think he's smart, he's intelligent because he knows what he's doing. What he learned, he understands. He can tell a person what the job is all about.
One of the things about Chris is that he was amazingly gifted in a variety of technical languages. So he did Power Builder development, and he was very good at it. And when he came and worked for me, I needed somebody to work on the mainframe. Well, if you know anything about IT, if you're on the distributed side, you don't want anything to do with the mainframe side. You know, that's the old technology. But he both were needed. And I said, would you be willing to learn? And he said, sure. And I'm like, really? You know, I mean, you know, you'll do it. And can he do it? Well, he was one of the first people that was able to be cross-platform and proficient in both. And it's probably one of my better times in my career where Chris ultimately got promoted to senior programmer because of his ability to not just pigeonhole himself. He just, wherever the work took him, he did it, and he did it with a high degree of professionalism.
Why did I move out on my own when I did? I have to back up a little bit. I was working as a programmer analyst for 14 years at HSBC. In 2009, the economy was not going so good, so HSBC decided to shut down the business that I was supporting. In turn, they let most of the programmers go, which included me. One day, one of my dad's friends was over, and we had a talk about the future. After it, we decided to buy the condo. The most scary thing was finding aides.
I was applying for jobs on Cure.com. I messaged Chris, and then he messages me, like, hey, I'm interested and all that. And Chris messages me, meet me at 7 p.m. Because usually on care.com, like they ask you, okay, so what's your background? You know, a little he's just like, meet me at 7 p.m. I was like, and I was so hesitant that I messaged like, hey, I can't meet you today. I'll do it tomorrow. And then literally before pulling in, I told you, remember that I was looking at the building? So yeah, that's how I met Chris. So I usually do everything, bathing and feeding and you know, all that. But other than that, I'm not really limited. I try to do as much as I can, whatever Chris needs help with. It's like this one line that I like. This is not him. He's not only a guy with CP. He just has a different way of doing everything. So that's one thing that I really learned from Chris. Sometimes I feel really sad when it's a really hot day and Chris doesn't have anybody to give him water. One thing that Chris has transformed me in a person. Don't ever think that something is enough. I know when I come on a really hot day and give him water to drink, I swear, like, everything, all my sorrows are so less compared to like what he has to go through.
I marvel at with Chris are the number of friends that he has, the number of people in his life who are very dedicated to him, who will drive him back and forth to church or whatever other appointments he has.
Chris is nonverbal, but there's still a connection I think we have, like at Mass, when we're praying at Mass, or if there's times where we'll spend some time in prayer. He generally will bow his head and pray with me. I'll verbalize it. Or he can type up something that's on his heart on his iPad and share that. He likes to play it so the audio comes out so we can hear with our ears what he's trying to say. That is his voice. So praying with him is a blessing, as it is with all friends, because it's that connection that's at a deeper level. Than it's just easier for him if someone comes and wakes him up and gets him ready and then takes him to Mass versus having two people there, like an aide and then a friend. So it took a little bit of time to learn how to do that through talking to his aides and talking to Chris, finding out what he likes, what he needs in the mornings. And then finding that rhythm and just remembering it. You know, if I'm only there once a month or every several weeks, there's a lot of little details to keep track of. So it's been good, though. I think it's really taught me patience in with myself, just trying to remember those things and do them in the right order. And Chris is always extremely gracious when things don't go exactly the way they should. He usually laughs about it and smiles. And
some of us who sometimes I don't want to have to walk across the parking lot because it's too cold or it's raining or it's snowing, but here's Chris coming in his chair from miles away just to make sure that he can get to church. You know, he'll chase me down for confession. You know, it's, Father, it's time for me to go to confession. It's Advent or Lent or whenever it is. And, you know, he makes sure that he gets to confession, which I think is an inspiration for all of us, because sometimes we just don't feel like doing those things. But, you know, there's Chris. And that is definitely a gift from his parents. Chris has inspired me specifically in that way, that he keeps going even when things are tough. You know, when there's a dark day, he keeps trusting, you know.
I do a monthly blog post for the Diocese of Joliet, and I always say that God gave me cerebral palsy for a reason. Every person has a cross to bear if they know it or not. If we have a cross and I have cerebral palsy, which is not a piece of cake to handle, why would cerebral palsy not be a cross to bear? Cerebral palsy is more than a physical disability. It affects how people look at me, economically, my manlyhood, and other things. I would love to have a wife to spend my life with, but I don't think it will happen because our society says that women want strong and well-educated men. If you are not that man, you must be a loser. Am I a loser? I don't think so, but sometimes I feel like I am. I never thought I would be a public speaker doing talks around the country. There are many people who say that they don't see God helping them. I didn't realize that God had an important role in receiving my master's until now. I knew God helped me but never thought of the timing was so critical. The Bible says I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. This proves how I received my master's. It was not out of luck, but it was through God.
St. John of the Cross talked about the dark night of the senses or the dark night of the soul. And these dark nights are invitations from our Lord to believe and love more perfectly. And I think that is exactly what Chris has done, and that's the way that he's inspired me, that even in those dark moments, he continues to, he believes and loves more perfectly. And that's an invitation for all of us to live, to believe and love more perfectly.
One day, one of my friends and I were talking. They said that one of the things on their bucket list was to write a book. They said we should write a book about our lives with cerebral palsy, and I said sure. The next 2 years we wrote it in the title as they said we couldn't. It is on my website disabilityawareness.us and on Amazon. After the book was done, I felt like I had more to say, so I started a YouTube channel on the website. God gives us a cross or several crosses to carry in our lifetime. As we carry our crosses, we often tell God that the cross is too heavy. Just think what Jesus had to carry when he shouldered the wooden cross for his crucifixion. He carried every sin that was committed and will be committed in the future. As difficult as living with cerebral palsy is, I know that it is not as bad as what Jesus endured for my sake and for yours.
Someone who's used media a lot in evangelization, so I believe in the importance of Catholic radio, Catholic TV, Catholics using the new media. Can I encourage everyone to watch Shalom TV? I think it's a great vehicle of evangelization. And God bless all of you.